All right, I think we're ready to kind of move into the intro phase. I wanted to just reintroduce the team here. I'm Elisa Barba. This is Engagement Strategies. I'm Elisa Barba. Oh, I jumped ahead. Sorry about that, Jen. I'm the Managing Director of America Amplified. Chelsea Naughton is here. She is our Digital Engagement Manager. Paola Marizan is an engagement trainer, as is Brittany Howell. Give us a wave, guys, when I mention your name, even though you can see the pictures there. Abby McCafferty is our project manager. Jessica Maria Ross is our in-person engagement trainer. And Jen Brandell is another one of our fabulous trainers. Jen is also the co-founder of Hearken, which is one of our key tools that we will be using as we move forward. And Jen is going to be going through our agenda for today because she is our lead trainer for today. So take it away, Jen.
Excellent. Well, I'm so glad to be in the room with all of you on this bright, almost December day. Holy crap, how did that happen? And we are going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to really resurface some of the things we've learned in earlier sessions, put them together, and advance your strategy to make it practical and get you ready to get launched very soon with your Engaged Elections 2024 strategy. So I was just going to show you real quick what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about community and stakeholders again. We're going to review some engagement fundamentals because it's easy to forget and we want those to be at the foundation of everything you're doing. We're going to talk about the Hearken embeds. You see an example here on the right, just so you know a little bit more about what do they do, what do they mean, and how are you going to use them. We're going to give you a ton of different examples for how you can do engagement. You're going to get a quick bio break. We're going to talk about a really important thing, which is closing the loop. When you do engagement, it's not enough to say, what do you want to know? If you don't tell people that they mattered, you might as well not start. And then we're going to help you start to get to some decisions and get that strategy down on paper and talk about workflow and workload, which are two very important things when it comes to engagement. So I'm going to throw it back to Elisa though with a very exciting announcement that you can see more about right here.
So we love seeing all of you on Zoom, but we're even more excited to see many of you in person. We have received a Knight Foundation grant, which is a really big deal, to host all of you, many of you, I should say, in Indianapolis later next year, April 4th and 5th, for an in-person workshop and fly-in. We will cover all of your expenses. We will fly you there. We will put you up. We will feed you. And then we will play with you because we want this workshop actually to not be, sitting there taking notes, but to really be an experiential workshop where we go from taking many of the strategies and engagement ideas that we're talking about now and we're putting in place in the beginning of the year and then pivoting to really, really engage as we move forward into the election. So we will have signups on our website, who the person will be. We will arrange all the travel, etc. One thing I just wanted to mention in case you didn't know this, April 4th and 5th is a Thursday and Friday. The following Monday, which would be April 8th, Indianapolis is sitting smack dab in the path of a full solar eclipse. So if you wanted to stay over the weekend through Monday and get your mind blown by that experience, we welcome that. Many of us will be doing the same. So just wanted to let you know we're going to be, there's a press release going out about this Knight Foundation grant today, and we are excited to share it with you. And if you have any questions, of course, reach out to us and we will be there to answer.
Wonderful. I learned a fun word that I didn't know before, that Indianapolis is in the path of totality and that the entire sun is going to be blocked out. There are not many places in the US where that's going to happen. There will be a few, but this is like a very special spot. So excited to see people and then not see people for like 30 seconds and then see you again.
And as Elaine Clark says from in Utah, totality is life-changing. So we deliberately scheduled this so that you could stay for the eclipse if you wanted to. So just to know.
That's how much we care.
Yeah.
We're also witches, so you'll learn more about that soon. Anyway, we're gonna start today with a little pop quiz. You can do a shoulder shimmy if you're feeling it, but we want to just reinforce some of the things that we've been talking about so far and make sure we're all on the same page here. So, question 1. Do not put the answer in the chat quite yet, or don't enter it yet, but we want to know, is audience engagement the same thing as community engagement? And you can just put a simple yes or no. When I tell you, you're going to hit enter, and we're going to see everyone's answers at once. So get it loaded in the chat. I'll give you 5 more seconds because it's a pretty short answer. And all right, hit go. Is it the same? Woo! No, 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 no. I like Lisa's got the capital no. Okay, excellent. Y'all get that. Beautiful. 100%. Okay, audience engagement, just as a reminder, and we'll reinforce it more today. It's about the people who know you, the people who are coming to your house, the people who you're already trying to make sure they have a good time and who are aware of your brand. Community engagement, the people's house that don't know you. You're going to go over to their place, get to know them, get to understand what makes them tick, and invite them over to your house whenever the time is right. So that's a quick and dirty. We will be going deeper into that with your strategy as we go. All right, question number 2. What can a network map help you do? Got a chance to play with network maps in the last 2 sessions. Can it A, help you identify people and groups affected or impacted by a topic? Can it B, generate new ideas about how to cover a topic? Can it C, surface non-obvious strategies for sources and distribution? Or D, all of the above? So I'll give you about 5 seconds to put your answer in the chat. Don't hit send yet. A, B, C, or D. And when you're ready, 3, 2, 1, let's see what you got. Ooh, yeah, I think we might be batting 100 here. Everybody's got D. That is correct. It can do all of these things and more.
They are such good students.
Excellent students. I actually kind of used a network map to plan a going away party last week. So there's even more you can do with these. Gold stars for all. That's right, Brittany.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So going on to our last and final pop quiz question for today. Is having empathy just about your feelings? This is something we talked about last time. So you will put in the chat yes or no. Don't hit send yet. Is having empathy just about your feelings? Good question. All right. In 3, 2, 1, let her rip. Let's see what we got. Ooh, oh my gosh. All right, y'all get it. Y'all get it. I'm gonna throw it to Chelsea here to just resurface and impress upon you what empathy actually is and the different flavors of it, really.
Yeah, so we talked about 2 different flavors, the cognitive versus emotional empathy. And what we're going for in our work is that cognitive empathy, that type of empathy where you can understand why a person did something without justifying it. Yeah, cognitive and emotional. We like cognitive.
I love that. This is news to me, so thank you for adding a tool to my toolkit. Beautiful. All right. So now we're going to move into the meat of today's session, some new stuff that you will not have learned or talked about yet before. We're going to start by just getting a sense from everybody if you have chosen at least one new community of focus that you're looking to serve with your 2024 elections coverage yet. If you haven't decided, if your newsroom's got a few ideas or you haven't had time to meet yet, we want to know instead in the chat, what more do you need to do in order to choose that community of focus? So we'll give you about 20 seconds. We would like you to put into the chat. You can enter it whenever you're ready. So this isn't a chat waterfall. You can just throw it right in. But when you have an answer for what your community of focus is going to be alongside your audience that you're already serving, please put that in the chat. And then if you haven't decided, please put in the chat what more has to happen for you to choose it. So I'm going to call on some of my colleagues here to read out the chat, what you're hearing, what you're seeing.
We've got
Great.
voters in counties in Vermont with the lowest voter turnout. I love that targeting. We've got workers in rural and suburban areas in Ohio. It's awesome. We've got some focusing on the Latinx community. Some we're focusing on youth, more youth, which is great. Like young people are so important to this process and have so many questions. So that's really great. Agricultural communities, community colleges, first-time voters. Oh man, there are so many good ones.
It looks like everybody has really narrowed down on some community of focus. I haven't seen anything yet where folks are, oh, Sydney, kind of choosing 2, hoping you can balance both. Yeah, that's great. You don't have to choose just one. That's the other thing. You can really have as many as you like, but you're going to have different strategies for each one because no two communities are alike. So this is terrific. Okay, excellent. Remember these communities of focus, they will come into some of the breakout rooms and the conversations that we're going to have later today. All right, now we're going to jump into just an engagement fundamentals overview. Just to really reiterate some of the things we learned a few sessions ago to have them fresh in your mind as we go into getting some of the tactical and practical strategies made. So first time we met, we talked about the engagement ring. What it is, it's a feedback loop. And we have 4 simple steps. They're simple, but they have sub steps in each of them to really make sure you are creating a call and a response, not just a call out, not just getting people to give you information, but not doing anything with it. It is really about creating a useful, responsive feedback loop. And the 4 steps are, you're going to invite input from some group. And you have your communities of focus here. You're also very likely going to also invite that input from your audience too. That group will provide input. If you've got a good prompt, if you're putting it in front of people, they will respond. And it doesn't have to be about a billion people you're reaching. It can be about 20 meaningful responses. It doesn't have to be a scientific cross-section of society, but they're going to give you some input. And the important thing is you're not going to stop there. You're actually going to listen. You're going to wrestle with it. You're going to talk about it. You're going to think about how can we serve the needs that we heard from the people who told us what they needed. And you're going to create content with it because as news organizations, you are by definition content creators. And after you create the content, you're not just going to go on to your next story. You're going to make sure the people who participated know that they mattered, that you heard them, that they shaped your decision making, and that you're giving them what they were interested in knowing and helping them do the work that they do in the world, whether that's how to vote, how to understand a candidate, how to understand the context we're living in, whatever that may be. That last part is super, super important, often gets kind of like, oh, yeah, we didn't really do that, kind of thrown under the rug. And we're going to talk about ways to make that part of your process and part of your workflow. So another way of putting the engagement ring is just thinking about answering these questions. What input are you looking for? From whom are you looking to get that input? How are you going to get that input? And what's your workflow going to be? And then how are you going to close that loop? How are you going to get back to people and know that they matter? So we have in our sessions to date talked about your current audience and your community of focus. So you have that one pretty much checked off. You can always change and adjust as you go. You got a whole year almost before the election. So we expect you're going to learn and adjust as you go, but that one we have checked off. I also want to talk about real quick the approaches to engagement. We want to make sure with however you approach your engagement work, with the Hark and Embed, with other methodologies, whether that's focus groups, in-person tabling, text messaging, however you go about it, that you are not hitting the extractive column here. So we're going to tell you more about how you can give context for participation, how you can do that on air, how you can do that on your website, in other spaces. And you're going to tell people essentially like what they're going to get out of this relationship that you are creating, this call and response. I have 3 words here. Extractive, we know, is generally a bad term used in society. You don't want to be extractive. Transactional also often gets a bad rap where people think of transactional as kind of like cold or not good. In this sense, I want you to know I'm using it as a perfectly neutral word. It's an exchange. It's like when you go to a store, you want something, it's $10, you pay $10, there's a transaction. That's not bad. Everyone got what they needed and you're on your way. Relational is really where things start to get very emergent and interesting and kind of unexpected. You might be able to get there with the engagement that you do around elections, but you might stay in the transactional zone. That is totally fine. I just want to make sure you know that that is not a dirty word to us here. It's perfectly good. It's a way of just making sure you have truth in advertising, people get what they need. So I'll just give you a couple of examples to show what I mean by what it could look like to have an extractive, transactional, or relational engagement approach. Extractive looks like, please take our 40 question survey that's going to take you an hour. And there's no follow-up as to what happens. There's no incentive to take an hour of your time to do something, and they don't know when they're going to hear from you again. That is a no-no. You can still have a 40 question survey, but you got to do some work to make sure it's not extractive and that people are getting paid for their time or in some way opting in and getting heard back from you. On the transactional side, this is an example of the kinds of things you might do in 2024 is to ask people, we want to help you get the information you need before the election. What questions do you have about, let's say, Proposition HH? Ask and we'll answer as many questions as we can before voting day. That's a great kind of like, here's what we want from you, here's what we're going to give you back. Boom. Relational is kind of in the we don't know what we don't know yet. So an example would be, what keeps you up at night? We're collecting top concerns from our community, and your needs will serve as our roadmap for coverage. We're going to keep you posted each step of the way. That's emergent. You don't know what's going to come up. You're going to take cues and you're going to co-create with the people who are telling you what they need. So those are 3 different examples of just what we mean by those terms. So again, this approach that we are going to be training you to do will be at its very basis transactional, and you'll have the option to go into the relational territory if you're open to, able, willing, etc. So just to refresh us there. You might have that moment again of saying, oh wait, are we doing audience engagement or community engagement for our elections coverage? The great news is you don't got to choose. You get to do both. I love this image, Chelsea. Thank you for introducing this in our lives. You really get a chance with this approach to hear from different constituencies and learn what each of them need that might be the same, that might be different, and to make sure you're serving as many people as possible. We talked about before, public media is supposed to serve all of America. That's in the mission. That's the goal, is to serve a cross section. So this is going to help you ensure you get outside of your house to make sure you can serve more people that are in your listening area. So again, the example of your house is your audience, your community is their house, and you can use the same prompt for each of them. But your methods of listening and of getting that information and of following up are probably going to be different strategies depending on if you're engaging your audience or your community of focus. Okay, so what input? We've talked about from whom. Now we're going to talk about what are we asking for from people? What is it that we're looking for? Do we want their memories, their comments, their dreams, their hopes? No, we want their questions. This is a disclaimer and a reminder that we have a bias for questions because they're immediately actionable. They're going to help people. You're going to give them a direct service. You're going to improve the relationship you have with those people by giving them the information they're looking for. And it's a proven fact that they will pay you. More people will pay you if you are answering their questions and providing them that service. So I'm going to give you a quick Hark and Embeds 101. I know I'm talking a lot, but we're going to switch off soon and we're going to have some breakouts soon. But these embeds are essentially forms that are customizable that are going to live on your website and potentially on other community partners' websites as well for community engagement. They may or may not, but at the very least, they can live on your website and engage your audiences. What they are, they're simple, direct forms that allow you to pull in all of this information in one handy place, make sense of it, understand where people are coming from geographically, get the exact stuff that you're looking for to deliver on that promise of giving them that information. So you can feature different questions in these different submission embeds, like what questions do you have for candidates as they compete for votes, or what questions do you have about participating? And you can also program them in multiple languages. Elisa is going to talk about in a little bit, but in 2022, we had a lot of newsroom partners program them in Spanish for the election. But if you have big communities of interest you're trying to reach that speak additional languages, you can have them in those languages as well. And where you can place these embeds is within an article, like you would a YouTube video or any other sort of thing you're embedding. You can place it on a sidebar, so it's persistent across your site or on your homepage or in a section. You can also direct link to them within newsletters and on social media as well. So again, this is audience engagement. How to create these, what we kind of think of as doorways into your editorial process where people are already hanging out that you know. So really allowing them to stumble across an invitation in the places that they're already there. Early in the election cycle, we are going to encourage you to do a citizens agenda kind of approach, asking you to ask the people you're serving what questions they have for candidates as they compete for votes. This allows you to reverse this power dynamic. So instead of reporters sharing what candidates want voters to hear, you're asking the public what they want to hear from candidates, and you're allowing the public to be in the driver's seat. And this can result in all sorts of different content: candidate questionnaires, voter guides, on-air interviews, two-ways, talk show, call-in, whatever it is. You can have whatever kinds of products you want to come out of it. But it's making sure that the public is in the driver's seat as to what they want to know from candidates. This relates to this broader idea within the citizens' agenda, if you've heard of this approach before, about focusing on the stakes and not the odds. Horse race coverage is, I'll just say it, it's not good. I'll tell you more about why in a minute, but really focusing on what the stakes are of some people being elected or some parties being in power and the policies that they might have is what you need to focus on. This year, we could, and I'm not being hyperbolic, we could lose this version of American democracy this year and go back many versions of it. It's not, I'm not trying to scare you. It's true. And it's even more important in a year like this year to focus on the stakes and not just who might be up front, who might be winning, what does this poll say? That stuff actually doesn't help people understand what will happen if that person is in power. It just tells you numbers. It treats the election like a sport. And we've been working with newsrooms who have actually been demoting horse race election coverage. We have a great example from Colorado Newsline that we can share the link to you later. But they publicly came out and said, we're not going to do this as much anymore because we realize it's not good. And so instead, you're going to be focusing, and these questions that you're asking are going to help you focus on what people most need in their lives, what their concerns are, what might happen if someone's elected, what might happen if this policy is passed. So that is where we want you to put your energy in 2024. Now, you might be like, why is horse race coverage so bad? I could share you on 20 different research papers about why it is, but in short, research has found over and over again that horse race coverage is linked to distrust, both in politicians and in news outlets. It does not contribute to an informed electorate. All polls are inaccurate, every single one of them. There's never been a perfect poll in the history of polls. So you're just putting out information that's conjecture that doesn't help people advance their understanding of what's at stake. Importantly, it can also hurt female political candidates. It can give an advantage to novel and unusual candidates. Maybe there's some people who are novel and unusual you can think of in your own state or school board or city council, or nationally is very easy to think about who benefits from this horse race coverage, and it's people who are a little strange and not typically public servants. And it can shortchange third-party candidates as well because you discount them because, hey, they might not be able to win. For a while, there have been a lot of candidates who have come into power who have been great public servants who were long shots. So not focusing on horse race is actually a goal of this program. Sorry, getting over a cough. Then I'll throw it to Elisa shortly. But later in the election cycle, you're going to focus on answering all the voting questions. When people are actually getting ready with their mail-in ballots, figuring out where their polling places are to vote. And when you ask people what questions they have about the voting process, they're going to tell you all sorts of stuff you might not have thought of before that can result in deep dives, explainers, FAQs, printed guides, all sorts of stuff as well. So that's what you'll do with the embeds closer to the election. Now I'm going to throw it to Elisa just in time to have a coughing fit about the election.
Thanks, Jen. I know that this is a lot of information coming at you, but we're really trying to set you up. Many of you have asked as we've recruited you to be part of this project, well, what does Hearken look like? What is this embed? And so now we have a visual of it that you can see. So we've done this before here at America Amplified. We did this in 2022 for the midterm elections. 30 stations across 25 states. Many of you actually who are on this call were part of this. We provided you with a Hearken embed for your websites and elsewhere, and we answered over 600 questions over the few months before the midterms. And these are examples of some of the questions that came in during that time. Not always easy questions. And the prompt at that point was, what questions do you have about the voting process? What questions do you have about participating in the election? Many of the questions we got had nothing to do with the voting process, but had to do with candidates and issues and election security and stuff like that. So we researched answers and worked with stations to provide the answers to the people who asked the questions. Let's go to the next slide. So of course, stations put Harkin on their websites, but we also printed materials out like postcards and posters that you could use at live events, that you could, put into a library, you could put a tabling. I think the point is, when you look at the communities of focus that you're trying to reach, you can reach your audience, but if you're trying to reach new communities, you have to find the platforms that will reach them. And if it's young people, where are you going to go to meet new voters or disaffected voters? That's what we have to figure out, and that's where we create these kind of strategies. But these are just some examples of the printed materials that we used. And as Jen pointed out, there's content that can come from these questions. We produced dozens of FAQs in response to the questions that came in for stations all across the country. We'll write them, you guys can edit them, and you guys can post them. You can also put them into social media as well. We had a number of stations who did that. And then there's stories and feature stories that are inspired by the questions that your audience actually has. Now, I think a lot of you know that monitoring these embeds for the questions that can come in and answering those questions, it takes a lot of work. It takes staff, which is why stations are often reluctant to jump into this. But we are here to kind of work on the back end for you. We have created something that we're calling the Public Media Election Portal, which is a web-based database of validated election information from secretaries of state's office all across the country, where the questions will come in to this portal, an answer will be generated. We will verify the answer and edit the answer, and then collaborate with you to send the answer back to the questioner. It looks a little scary, it looks a little internet-y, webby, but there's going to be some people to help. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to introduce you there to our engagement support staff of Steph Rivera and Caitlin Biljan. They are both people who have been working with Harkin over the years and are very expert in working that system. This process that we're developing here, we have the questions that will come in through your portal. So through your embed will go directly into the portal. An answer will be generated. Caitlin or Steph, one of them will be assigned to your station, will verify the answer, edit the answer, and then work with you to get an approval that this is the answer we want set out. Maybe in addition to just answering the question, you will also provide a link to a story that your station has already done or one of your community partners has done that provides more context for that answer. The answer is sent out via email on behalf of your station in America Amplified. And then when we reach a critical mass, we will create FAQs or inspire content for your station, and we'll track the impact of this. There will be training on this. It probably looks a little intimidating at this point, but we will go over the training. And our hope, we're trying this out, but our hope is that it creates efficiencies that we will all learn from and use, and that this information or election portal that we created hopefully can be used in future years by future stations as well. That's the idea. So one more slide. We'll look at the timeline here, going through the training right now, coaching and cohort support. Within the next few weeks, we're going to be putting stations into groups. In January, we will launch the Harkin Embed, working with you to help do that. In April, as I said, the in-person gathering workshop. We will continue and pivot towards the election, much more focused towards the end of this year, and then the election. And then we'll try to figure out what kind of impact we have and evaluate how well all these processes worked and what value they brought to your station, to your audience, and to your community. Questions. We would love to have some questions. Did we dump too much on you? What are you thinking? Let us know. Put a question in the chat or raise your hand. Let's see, get a full view here.
We've got a question in the chat. I'd like to know more about what closing the loop looks like.
Ooh. Jen, you wanna talk about that, or JMR?
Actually, that'll be part of this is great, Zachy, is that's going to be part of today's session in a little bit, but I will
Yeah.
just say in short, it means making sure the people who participated know what happened with their participation, and there's lots of different ways to do it. America Amplified can take on part of that. Your newsroom can take part of that as well.
Yep. And I'll just add preview for next week. That could be either the people you directly engage with or community partners.
Caitlin asks, how will you handle questions that come in that seem to be pretty specific to the station coverage area? Should we plan on taking the lead? There will be a system set up where your engagement support staff will, whomever you've designated as your editorial lead, will ping you. We will notify you. Oh, we have a question that we should collaborate on. We will help. We will always try to help, but there will definitely be some questions that we'll have to say, I have no idea, and go to you. No answer will go out without us talking to you about it. And somebody asked, what did you do about questions about national candidates in the midterms? Obviously, there were no national candidates in the midterms. There's no presidential election. So we didn't have to deal with the huge national polarized issue question. We'll have to see what kinds of questions we get and how well we answer them. I think this is going to be a work in progress for all of us.
We've got a couple more coming in. Heidi would like to know, when we embed Hearken on our website, does the info go to America Amplified? Does it go to both the station and America Amplified? How does it work?
Yes, it will go to both. We will have the back end information. You'll know, you'll get an email from the person who asked the question, I think a zip code as well. And they will also have the option of whether or not to opt into your newsletter when they ask the question. It was something like a big jump in newsletter subscriptions, I think, for all the stations on the embeds. We will supply you with reports on who is asking questions and where they're coming from, and you'll have all that information.
How do we form our questions to elicit more productive responses and can lead to potential stories?
That's a great question.
You want to?
There you go, Jen.
Great questions.
I'll say we've tried and tested out many different question prompts over the years, and the ones that we're strongly recommending that you use are strong ones that tend to work very well. Now, that doesn't mean that just the question with no one getting any more information about why are you asking or what a good example would look like is going to be enough. So on your landing page, which we're going to encourage you to make and talk you through that in later sessions, and in the materials that you create about this initiative, we're going to encourage you to say, here's what we mean when we say this, or here are some good examples. Here's why we're asking. And you'll test that prompt and see how it works. If you need to adjust your prompt for the community of focus you're working with or whatnot, you can work with America Amplified to adjust it. But the two that we are highly encouraging you start with are really pretty fail-safe. They work. So at least anything to add there?
As I said, last year, no matter how specific you get in the question or in the prompt, you're still going to get questions that veer off into other directions no matter what, especially, people's biases come up about what they assume is going on. We started last year, many of you may remember, by responding to questions that were off our topic by saying, sorry, we're not here to answer those questions. Do you have any questions about voting mechanics? And then we realized that was deeply unsatisfactory. We just were not responding to people's questions. So then we just basically started working harder to find answers to whatever questions people asked. And that's what we're going to try to do this year. But as I said, there's what? 5 of us, 2 engagement support staff, and 50 of you. So we'll have to see how that goes.
I think that segues well into Diane's question. Diane would like to know, do stations get access to all the submissions? And I assume that means including those ones that veer kind of afield.
Or maybe they're referring to all submissions from all across the country. I don't know.
Yeah, Diane, do you have clarity on which one you might be referring to?
Just the submissions that are on our particular
Oh yeah,
page.
you'll see all of them. Yeah. we will not be selective in sharing them with you. You will get notified when they come in as well.
Anna has a question. Will there be a way to know that we're reaching our target audience?
Will there be a way to know that we're reaching our target audience? I think of this project as kind of being two-pronged, that the Harken embed will be reaching your current audience for the most part. If you want to use the Harken embed to reach your target audience, then that is going to be using different platforms and different strategies to reach it. And I think we will be trying to evaluate that all along the line. We are going to be using something called an impact tracker to see what kind of impact we have. So that will help us. And we'll also be able to, if you're targeting a certain geographic area, we'll be able to see from the zip codes that questions are coming in. But this question prompt model is just one part of the engagement, right?
And Shireen has her hand up. Shireen, want to come off mute?
Yeah, thanks. I'm trying to type this out, but I thought it might be easier to speak if that's okay. Thank you all. This is really helpful. I've been participated in projects like this a few times over the years, and I still find it really helpful to hear the different strategies and techniques, and sort of like it keeps us aligned. And so on that note, one of the things that I think has really been gelling with me this time is the difference between audience engagement and community engagement. I think we've seen results with audience engagement in a way that, we like, and it's great. But with community engagement, and we've seen results there, we've done things that we're excited about there too, especially like, Lisa, you mentioned printed material. It's like, as great as Harken is, when you get back to some bare bones strategies, it can be really rewarding. However, we still feel a little bit, or I still feel a little bit like the community engagement work can feel parachuting in. And we have tried to lean into partnerships, which I love, but a lot of the partners, including us, it's a lot. It's a big job. And we're resource strapped, and we're community organizations and small media organizations. And I just was wondering if there are like great examples of this, or tips on how to keep that ecosystem alive.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, Shireen, thank you. I think that kind of gets to the heart of what we're trying to do, and how we're trying to do it. Just a couple different thoughts. One, to do this well, we have to stop doing something else. We have to make the time to do this. We can't do it as an add-on to the work that we're already doing. Secondly, I'll just say we're in the midst of planning our training session for next week, which is about how to build partnerships, how to work with community partnerships, how to build equitable partnerships, and to keep them going. So all I can say is, yes, it's hard. Yes, you have to do less of the other stuff you're doing. And we're going to talk more about that next week.
I also just want to jump in here and say that one of the things that I love so much about this initiative is that it builds in a cohort model. And in some ways, there's only so much we can do in this virtual 2-hour training, but we will be breaking up into cohorts where you'll have more time to learn from each other. Like Shireen, like we can learn from you about how you did partnerships and how you do it differently. And certainly when we do the fly-in, we can do some work. So I also just want to, seed the field here that we'll be beginning those conversations, and they're really important conversations. There's a lot to cover, and we'll have multiple touch points to do that. So we'll begin that conversation next week, but just know, like all of the trainings we've done, they're really seeding the field, and you'll have this whole support system through your coaches and your cohorts to keep iterating and figuring out how to get to the goals that you have, how to assess that you've reached those audiences, and how you can, do less and do better.
You know what? I think we're going to have to move on. Elaine, there is a way to gather demographic information, not through the Harken embed. I think we'd have to go back to the questioners. Elaine asked about demographic information.
You could add more fields if you wanted to, but
Mhm.
that could be a conversation with your coach if you want to add. We just know that the more fields that you add from someone and the more invasive it might feel, it can keep some people from participating. So sometimes it's nice to keep it very open or make some of those fields optional. So that is something we could talk about as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you all. Thanks for all the great questions.
Yeah, this is terrific. And I want to actually talk about real quick before I throw it to Chelsea to remind us of the different layers of engagement is that the tool is not the point. So the Harken embed is not the point. It's one means of starting relationships and to really focus on what is the need that can strengthen this relationship and provide value for the person you're trying to help. And so the engagement ring is really the process. And the ring can happen without the tool. It can happen going out in the community, tabling, putting door knockers on people's doors. It can be through conversations, showing up in other spaces. It's that engagement ring. And the tool is one way of organizing that stuff and allowing you to get passive information in when you're doing other things. So it's a way of making some of these efforts more efficient, but it's not about the tool. So just wanted to say that as the CEO of the company with the tool, like I would be thrilled if everyone just did this and didn't need any tools. Like, amen. I just want the relationships to happen. And you can fulfill this engagement ring through lots of different processes. And Chelsea's actually going to take you through and remind the different 3 layers that you have to choose from for this initiative. So I'll throw it to Chelsea to talk about this beautiful pyramid that we've talked about before. And I've also just grafted on some of my my colloquial language here about your house or another person's house on these to show you like we're all talking about the same thing here. So over to you, Chelsea.
Thanks. Yeah, so you'll remember this hopefully from session 1 when we started talking about the different layers or types of engagement that you could participate in through this project and the way that we think about it at America Amplified. We break it down into these 3 layers of foundational, expanded, and full scale, where foundational is the kind of engagement that's happening inside your house, people that are choosing to come to your house. Expanded is starting to step out into other folks' houses. You're dipping your toes into some more partnerships, perhaps. You're putting a little bit more time into this work. And then that full scale is when you're all in, you've got community partnerships or collaborators. It's totally at their house. And you've probably stopped doing something else in order to make this really be the core of your work. Some examples of how that foundational looked, and also as just a reminder, folks were asking about capacity and this is so hard, how does it actually come together? We think of all of this type of engagement as valid and worthwhile. And so even if you're not on that full scale, I mean, that word sounds great. You've achieved the pinnacle of the pyramid. You can't get there without the foundation, and we're here to support whatever layer of the pyramid you're building, whoever's house you're in, we're there for it. So this is where, if you're thinking about the Harken tool, you've got that up on your website, you're sharing it out on social media, on your own social media. It's, on all of your landing pages. You're telling people about it on air. You say, hey, go to our website, we're collecting your questions. That's all tools that are in your house. Those are all things that you can do, you can deploy pretty quickly, and you can engage your existing audience. This is what a lot of our stations did for the midterm election project. We gave you, and we'll be giving you, templates for social media tools that you can use. You just plug in your own copy. We could make it pre-populated with copy. But this is that really like plug and play, get something out there, do your best to collect some questions and get them answered. And then when we get to that expanded engagement, that next level, this is a lot of what we saw in this last round for the midterm elections as well. We saw a little bit more elevated work on social media, moving beyond those templates, doing call outs, using those stickers inside the native Instagram story app, like that example you see from KUNC. You can cross share your content on social media onto your partners or collaborators social media accounts, and that starts to get you into another house. It's not just reaching your social media. You've worked with a partner who is tight with the community that you are hoping to serve, and they have agreed that it's mutually beneficial to do this. We saw a lot of classroom visits where you're going into a community college classroom or a high school classroom to answer questions with folks who are maybe new voters, et cetera. Again, that's a situation in that transactional zone where you know that you have something that would benefit the folks that you're reaching. So you can come to their house and answer those questions. And you can see a lot of content surface from that too. Those box pop style stories, FAQs can come out of both foundational and expanded. And then we get to our full scale, which is, like I said, you're all in, you're at their house, and you're engaging people who really aren't part of your core audience. This can look like digital partnerships or content sharing, but it can also look like a collaborative storytelling project with a community partner inside the community that you're building trust in, and getting having amplifying voices that you typically don't hear from, who typically don't get to share their story. This can look like the News and Brews event that WITF did that we talked about last time with that Braver Angels partnership at where they had folks from across the political spectrum come and have really deep and tough conversations about where we are politically. The midterm elections were quite the event in Pennsylvania, and there was a lot to talk about on this topic. So those were really powerful events that you can think about pulling off as well for these general elections coming up. We have more examples of non-election related different levels of engagement events and activities that our stations have done on our website under case studies, and we're sharing more of them through our Amped Up series. So look for our those coming out in our newsletter, and you can always peruse on our website for more of those examples. And feel free to ask us hey, I'm trying to think of this, do you have an example? We have sort of a living library Rolodex of all of those different case studies in our brains, and can sift through it and share the relevant ones with you if you have questions. So with that, do you have questions about foundational, expanded, full scale, your house, their house, how this is applying more in practice? Oh yeah, Zachy, the News and Brews event. So we talked about that in session 1. This was the event that WITF did through a partnership with an organization called Braver Angels, which focuses on facilitating conversations with folks on different sides of the political spectrum. And they have these events called News and Brews, which are at a local brewery. Well, it's really bright in my office right now, at a brewery that they've chose to partner with. So, a little bit of liquid courage perhaps involved in getting these conversations started, a neutral territory, not at the station, and perhaps in a neighborhood or community where they haven't showed up super often. And then they have these facilitated conversations with experts in having tough conversations with the Braver Angels. Volunteers act as moderators to those conversations. And they heard really, really interesting stuff from the community about their anxieties about the political environment that we were in, about what they thought about the coverage that they were seeing, both nationally and from WITF's coverage, or if they didn't even know who WITF was, just what they were seeing in general from local news and what they wanted to see more of. And it was really just a great way to have these folks who wouldn't have otherwise been able to meet each other, have a conversation in a safe environment, moderated environment, and for the station just to listen and hear what take the temperature of the real political climate.
We have a question from Diane.
Yeah.
Hi. One of the question has to do with partnerships on the full scale level. One of the things that's kind of come up in conversation at our station as I've started exploring this is the question of like who and to what degree is appropriate to really get involved in partnership, considering the position of neutrality that we're supposed to hold. And the that the gray line, I guess, of like endorsements from the station that come with partnerships and you know, the perception of that and those alliances. So any wisdom or advice in terms of navigating those details would be awesome.
Yeah. Jessica and I were talking about this just yesterday, because I think that there's a lot of organizations out there, of course, that have a clear political agenda. And my feeling, and anybody else can weigh in as well, but my feeling is in this election year, if there's any kind of political and strong advocacy bent towards a community organization, that you need to kind of really evaluate whether that's the partner that you want to be with at this point. I mean, even to the point where, you know, if it's an organization that's advocating strong and immediate action on climate change, that can be a politically polarizing subject these days as well. So I think that has to definitely come into the equation when you're picking a partner. Again, next week, we're going to be talking about partners. You got to be careful. Is there another question?
There's one from the chat. How do you balance scale, reaching thousands through the website with high touch quality in-person interactions like cabling that might reach far fewer? Is there a balance in weighing weight that you assign to each, or do you view them as purely complementary?
Well, I think Jen has weighed in is that they are complementary. Quality is more important than quantity, but also bear in mind that these high touch in-person events are, at least in the equation that we're setting up here, these are for new communities that are not part of your audience. So it takes a while to build the trust and build the relationships, but you have to start that way. And I think that there are case studies you can read on our website and that we can talk about further about how, you know, you start small and it becomes worthwhile. And it may not be reaching millions, but you are reaching a new audience and you are bringing in revenue. It does show in the end. I think we're ready for a break, right?
Yes, perfect timing. Okay, here we go. I'm going to share screen again. And this gets to the question we had before about the ways you can close the feedback loop and have people participate in the content creation. This is meant to be food for thought. It's not, the demand or that you have to do this in your elections coverage. You can simply answer people's questions, close the feedback loop, and that's that. Or you can have them be involved in the story in different ways, in deeper ways, if you're interested. So I was going to show you a little bit about what that can look like. And then we're going to do some breakout rooms. We're going to get a chance to talk with colleagues from other newsrooms and ideate around your strategy. So we've talked about what input, questions, 2 different questions, one at the beginning of the election cycle, one toward the end of the election cycle, or at least where you're going to start. You can always collect more input if you want. And then we've talked about from whom you're going to collect it. You have your community of focus chosen. You have your audience already there, ready to engage. Now we're going to talk about how, workflows, and closing the loop. So when we talk about how people might participate beyond just giving you their question, I wanted to share with you the reasons why participation can be great. It is directly correlated with the likelihood that people are going to feel like you heard them, to be proud to be represented, and to share the content you make with their friends and family, neighbors and colleagues, strangers and grocery store clerks alike. Like, they will be very pumped to be in the news if you are generous and able to acknowledge them by name, include them in the story in some way. So I wanted to show you a few different examples of what that can look like. So before I do, though, I just want to say, put yourself in their shoes for a moment. Let's talk about cognitive empathy. If someone were to ask you for your question and you gave it to them and they answered it, and you never knew they answered it, someone just sent it to you or you came across it later, you might be a little annoyed. You'd be like, hey, why didn't you tell me? That's my question. But if they let you know that your question was answered, you'd likely feel pretty good about it. If they credited you by name and you were open to that, you didn't need to be anonymous, you would be even more excited about that. You'd probably share it with your friends and say, hey, look, I'm cited in the story. If they included your photo, or you were featured in the story, or you got some sort of ride-along experience with a reporter in a newsroom, you would be jumping up and down, so excited to share, hey, this story that I had to do very little to make possible, but now is a resource for my community, is here. And I am part of it. It feels good. And so I want to share you what that can look like in a public media context. So if you just want to include people by their name in the work that you're doing, here's an example from our partners at KQED. It's not election related, but it's, what makes the street private and why does San Francisco have so many? And so right at the top, they're introducing the question asker. Victoria Eng wanted to know this. And why did she want to know? They tell the story about why she wanted to know. She's also included in the audio, and she's woven into the story itself. So she's named, and that's exciting. You can also, let me see this one. You can also feature people in the story in different places. You could feature them up top here, like Gail Tate, who wanted to know what happens to lotto money because she was always told it helped schools, but she was like, how does that actually work? And so she's part of the story. She's included, her voice is included on the air. And she's also at the bottom, has a little brief, nice bio about her and a photo. Here she is in studio, talking about who she is, why she cares, a little bit more about her. And it's lovely. She's much more likely to share this with her friends because she's like really highlighted in the story. And then this is like, the dream scenario here where someone actually gets to ride along and get to know the answer. This version with Gail, she was in the studio and the reporter told her what he found and she reacted to it, which was great. This version from Vermont, this person got to ride along and actually go to the interviews. So this is the question asker, Jeff Wenberg, who wanted to know about Vermont's aging sewer systems. And you would think this might not be an interesting story. I gotta tell you, it's a great story. It's a great podcast. It's fascinating. It deals with all sorts of policy stuff, personal, political, everything. And this guy, Jeff, was like, I want to go along to every damn interview you do. And so you get to see him in the story. There he is again with the reporter. and he gets to be there with the public city worker, etc. He's really deeply involved. And so the story that results is one where the public is very well represented, and people who are listening feel like they have a role to play in the station. And then they're able to ask with a Harken embed at the bottom, what questions do you have? So this is something you can think about as you're creating these calls to action. How do we allow people to participate in different ways? And so just to reiterate, what you can do in digital or print, if you have some print partner as well, you can acknowledge the people who asked the question, or that you got a lot of questions and it came from a lot of people, in the intro, in a kicker, in a sidebar. You can create little profiles. It does not take long to just ask someone to send you a photo and tell you a little bit more about them and why they care. And then you can invite more participation on the stories that are public powered and that are engaged. Again, in the intro, you could say, we're collecting, this story comes from your questions. We're collecting more questions for candidates here. You could do it midway down a story to break it up. You could do it in a sidebar in the kicker, etc. And then you can also, in broadcast, have that be part of the audio or video. If you also do video or TV, you can have the people who are involved be featured in that. So you can acknowledge them at the top of the story, at the end. You can make promos between shows or segments featuring a lot of voices asking questions, telling people where they can ask their question, the URL, where to go, etc. So other ways of closing the loop beyond involving people in the story is making sure that you are letting them know that they were included. If at all possible, let them know before the story airs or goes out, because they'll be looking for it, they'll be anticipating it, they will share it. You'd rather have you tell them first than a friend share and be like, oh, hey, you're in the story. You know how that feels. So this could be a private thank you email. You will have everyone's email addresses. It could be a bulk email to everyone who asked questions. It could be social media shout outs, like really anything you can dream up. And we're actually going to give you some time now to dream up what your strategy is going to be. So these are the 3 major pieces broken down into very simple formats you're going to talk about with a newsroom partner, another newsroom, in breakout rooms. You're going to discuss how you might listen, the methods you're going to use, technology, tabling at events, focus groups, whatever it is, how you're going to invite that participation. So are you going to do on-air messages? Are you going to put billboards in town, skywriting, put call outs in your stories? Are you going to do partnerships? And then how might you acknowledge and follow up with people? Are you going to put them in the story? Are you going to email folks? What does it feel like you have the capacity and energy to do? Again, this is not going to be your locked in strategy that you have to commit to from now through 2024. You're going to learn a lot once you start to try this, but just throw down what you feel like you're excited about and what you think you might be able to do with this election strategy. So you're going to be paired with another newsroom. You're going to brainstorm and discuss these ideas with one another. And then we're going to come back together and talk about it. And we're about to share with you in the chat a Google Doc where you are going to find your area to write this stuff down. What you're going to do is on the Google Doc, you'll see on the left-hand side, there's a little thing that says outline form. You can scroll down and just click on your newsroom. It's alphabetized by state and then your newsroom, and click on that. And when you click on it, you're going to see a chart to fill out with your engagement approach and your strategy there. So this is what you're going to discuss and try and fill out as much as you can in the breakout. You can always do the rest later if you don't get to everything. And then at the very top of the sheet, we have a little cheat sheet with what these terms mean and what the engagement strategy is, in case you're like, wait, I lost the plot. So with that, we heard you. We know that you want to spend some time learning from one another and brainstorming with each other, because you're going to get more ideas from other newsrooms. And so one newsroom is going to go first. You're going to brainstorm to this as quickly as you can, and then you're going to switch. We will tell you in the chat when it's time to switch. So before we get to breakout rooms, any questions on that front? Let me stop share. Are we all good? Okay. Yes, we can definitely share those links to example articles after the fact for sure. And then there's your link to the Google Doc. And then Abby is going to whisk you away shortly to your breakout rooms. Oh, hello, great to see people's smiling faces in your office, in your home, in some random back alley. No, it doesn't look like anyone's in a back alley. If you are, congrats on getting Wi-Fi. All right, we're excited to see you back here. Feeling punchy today, this cold medication.
You go.
Yeah. Well, we know that was not enough time for you to create an entire tip to tail strategy for how you're going to engage everyone in your audience and community. What we really wanted you to do is get started thinking about it and be able to come back with your newsroom, have a meeting, finalize what you're going to do, and have this be a working document that you use over the course of this program. So know that wasn't meant for you to have every single box filled out. If you did get all your boxes filled out, congratulations, gold star, you are ahead of the curve. So what we're going to do next is we're going to do another thing that we heard that you wanted more of and wanted to make sure we gave it to you today, and that you'll get reinforced with your coaching and with your cohorts as well. But just to talk about the anxieties that swirl around workflows. So doing engagement differently, or doing engagement overall versus business as usual, requires a different workflow. It's not just the same thing of like, have a meeting, pitch a story, get it assigned, go do it, done. Next one, rinse and repeat. You're starting to weave in feedback from people who are outside of your newsroom at different points. And so that requires a different way of getting the machinery to be well oiled in your newsroom to do this work. It's not impossible, but it does take intention. So what we want to show you and guide you on today is kind of the major parts of the workflow that you're going to want to discuss with your colleagues and get ironed out in the next few weeks before you start your engagement, so that you feel like you're not going to drop any balls and you're not going to let people down. When you ask them for information and they give it to you and then you don't follow up, it can be harmful and it can be worse than never asking in the first place. So we want to make sure you are set up for success here. And so in broad strokes, a workflow and engagement starts with your intention. And we did talk about mission statements in earlier sessions. So really regrounding in what is your mission? Why are you doing engagement? What are your goals? What are your metrics for success? What is that vision for why you're doing things differently? Then after you've grounded yourself in that intention, think about your invitation. Where and how are you going to invite participation in your process? What's going to happen with people's contributions? Where will you get their participation in the process? How are you going to get it? And this can get into like, are we making a Google form? Are we going to put things here? Are we going to have a meeting to talk about this? That's all stuff that's up to you in your newsroom based on how you typically do things. Then you're really going to want to use it and prove it. So how are you going to be shaped by people's participation? How are you going to mention that they mattered? How are they going to be included? And then how are you going to acknowledge and share gratitude for that? So close that loop. So workflow is really just writing out these steps, getting them on your calendar and checking them off the list. So we created this handy little guide. It's not every question under the sun, but it's the main ones you're going to want to consider for creating a good workflow. You're going to want to talk about and actually put a name or names to any of these that have a who, of who's going to craft the invite, whose job is it? We don't want to just assume it's going to happen. And then who's going to engage the people most impacted, the communities of focus, who's best positioned to do that? When are you going to do it? When are you going to start? Where are you going to do it? In public, in your newsletter, on air, etc. And then what engagement do you need to ensure that your on-air work is useful? So if you're thinking about getting engagement and you're just keeping it on your digital site, you're missing opportunities to have people be heard on your airwaves. So thinking about what are ways to make sure you're getting audio, you're getting information so that it can feed your broadcast or your podcast or wherever else you put your audio and on air. And then who's going to follow up? Who's going to thank the people you connect with and let them know? It is really good to have that be on someone's plate and have them understand that it's on their plate and not just assume so-and-so is going to take care of it. And then when and how are you going to follow up? Are you going to do it before a story airs? Are you going to do it after it's published? Email, phone, etc. Just really good to just talk about those things and make it explicit so nothing falls through the cracks. And remember that your coaches are here to help. So if when you're thinking about workflows, you're getting a little gummed up about like, what order should I do this in? Or is there a best practice or whatnot? We're here to help. So you're not alone in creating a workflow that's going to work for you. We know that every newsroom is slightly different, so we can't be prescriptive and say exactly here's what you should do, or here's when you should have this conversation in this editorial meeting. That's really up to how your newsroom works, but we're here to talk it through with you if you need it. So what we're going to do next, we are going to have about 10 minutes, and it's just going to be with your newsrooms. So you're going to be going into breakout rooms shortly. Abby will open them soon. You're just going to choose your newsroom to go into. And if nothing at all, what you're going to do is schedule a date to meet and to finalize the different charts that are in the Google Doc that we shared with you. So the one you started to fill out right before in that previous breakout, and then this workflow doc that's also this chart that's in that document as well. So make sure you have a date on the calendar before you leave the breakout room. So you'll have 10 minutes to look at schedules and figure that out. If you get that time and figure out who's going to be there before then, start answering the questions. Start putting in who you think or what your ideas are there. Again, does not have to be finalized. So with that, I want to check with Abby. Are we good on breakout rooms? And we can put that doc back in the chat.
Yes. Okay, rooms are open. If you can go and choose your station name.
But we know that there's not enough time to have all these conversations, and that it's likely you'll have to pull in other colleagues to decide some of the things that are in your strategy, in the workflows, etc. So we just wanted to give you a running start to do that. Your task in the next day, if not sooner, is to finalize when you're going to have that meeting. I'm going to show you here in your chart. I saw some people got to this. Threw down a meeting date to talk about workflows. And you got your attendees here. Go West Virginia Public Broadcasting. This is what we're hoping you're going to do, is that you're not going to be able to answer all these questions right now, but get a meeting on the calendar. That's going to be powerful for you to really work these things out with the folks who need to be in that room. So before, oh, I guess Bridget's going away. Sorry. Hope someone's
It's
not.
because I'm from Wisconsin and I put it in the wrong spot on the Google.
What are the chances?
So sorry, West Virginia.
That's hilarious. Well, you will see at the top of each page what your newsroom name is and where you belong. So it can happen. You know, we're got imperfect tools here, but thank you, Wisconsin, for doing that. So that's your goal, is to get a meeting on the books. Might have to wait until after the holidays, depending on what's going on in everyone's lives, but get it on the books. And then you will be many steps closer to getting things started, and also alleviate a lot of anxiety around, like, how the hell are we going to do all this? So trust us, you'll feel better after you have that meeting. So what we want to do in the last few minutes that we have is we want you to take a moment and consider what's coming up for you right now. We have gone over quite a bit of information in the last few sessions. It's that push and pull between I want to get started, but also, like, how do I make sure I do it right? And you're going to get started very, very soon. Next session we'll talk about shortly is going to be all about partnerships. And we know there are a lot of questions that came up around that today, but we also just want to hear what's coming up for you. What questions, concerns do you have that we can pair you with your coach to work out in the coming weeks? Like, what's fresh for you right now coming up? We just want you to be able to unload that so that we can design it into our future sessions and make sure that we address your concerns as you get going. So take a second. We're just going to be on mute for a moment and throw them in the chat whenever you have them. We just want to see where people are at. If you're feeling great and don't really have questions, you can also let us know with an emoji or a thumbs up or a all good. That's helpful information as well. Ooh, nice. Got one question. Mark, do we really need an outside partner? We want to do a rural area, but which one? Okay, this is great. Please flow those questions in. I'll shut up so you can think and write for a moment. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to think about what questions you have and put those in the chat.
Mark Simpson, always the bomb thrower.
Okay.
Elaine, I love that suggestion right there. I think that is super cool.
Ooh, how do we measure success? We've got some answers for that.
Dang, these are some great questions coming up. How upfront should we be that we're targeting a group? That is great. Great question from Mel about gearing up for November, but the March primaries, or different states have different primary times, are going to be at least as important. So how do we proceed? That is a great question. How to narrow down which races are most important to our group. Oh, this is so great. Wow. Good stuff. All right, we'll give you 1 more minute to write any questions down. We are not going to, we'd spend about 2 hours here answering all those questions. So just know that you can let them go for now, and we will hold them in our sweaty little hands, and we will start to get answers to you through a few different ways, through sessions, through emails, through additional training, through our in-person. We really just want to know kind of where your head's at right now. So I'm sorry it won't be that satisfying. It's kind of like, a Hark and Embed. You don't get an answer immediately. It's not ChatGPT. It's saying, hey, we'll get back to you when we have your answer. So we promise we will address your concerns as we go.
Well, again, just like you mentioned, we're doing the engagement ring, right? We're listening, we're collecting questions, and we're going to show you how we follow through, and we're going to have to figure out how and when to do that, just like all of you will probably have to do when you are out in the, in your communities, asking for questions and trying to get back the answers.
Absolutely. We have a really great question from Mark. If it's too late in the season for pumpkin spice, I think that might have to be a vote. I'm not here to yuck your pumpkin spice yum. It seems like really until summer comes, you can hit that spice. Oh, we have a great question from Shireen about compensating reporters and partners. This is awesome.
If you have freelancers,
yeah,
for the time, how to build engagement strategies into part of, or all of a small newsroom. On our website, you can see some articles that talk about how to decide what to stop doing. Very important.
This is great. Thank you all for these questions. If you have more that you're typing out or that come up in the next couple minutes, throw them in the chat. We're going to save the chat and we will get back to you. For now, I'm going to throw it to Jessica about a preview for next week where we're going to talk all about partnerships. I'll go off screen share because it's more interesting to see our faces.
I'm still like absorbed with the chat. All right, well, let me say this. Our next training is just in 1 week. So it's next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel for those of you that are boomers like me and know that reference. I get to co-lead that, so I'm super excited. And I'm excited because I am all about taking your engagement from the foundational to the expanded or even the full scale. And doing that, it's really helpful to have community partners. So we are going to be focusing on the why and the how of community partnerships. And based on some of your questions today in our session, in the room and in the chat, we're going to try and build some of that in. I guess a couple things that are kind of late breaking that I want to note based on what's come up today is that all of you that have done community partnerships, I want to invite you to bring those experiences into next week. So we want to lean into what's worked for you in particular and how we build off of them. So that's just a heads up. If you've done community partnerships, come with some ideas to share. And I would also say, if you have more questions, come with those as well. I think we're going to do some redesign so that we can get to both of those things. I also want to lift up, because it's come into the chat, we will have more time around the idea of community partnerships to talk with you about your specific cases in your one-on-one coaching sessions, as Jen has mentioned, but we will be forming cohorts in mid-January. That's by the end of the year. I said by the end of the year. Oh, well, we will be beginning to meet in our cohorts. That's what I mean to say. Thank you. We will be beginning to meet in our cohorts in mid-January. So I just want to show, I'm laying that out to answer a question in the chat and to pace out with you how we'll be getting these ideas and questions flowing in our training, but we'll be kind of landing some. You'll have opportunities around community partnerships to land them in your coaching and in your cohorts.
And don't hesitate to reach out too. If you have a question that needs answered, that's what we're here for. That's what we do.
That's right. So that's what's on deck. I noticed most of you have identified a community of focus that you plan to do your engaged elections project with. That's awesome. For those, because it helps to think about partnerships, for those of you who haven't kind of landed that community, I invite you in the next week before we meet, if you can, to connect with, your team or your newsroom to kind of move that conversation forward. So that's my invitation. All right. So community partnerships on deck. And with that, let me toss it to you, Elisa, to close us out.
Yes, and Abby, if you could launch the poll now while I'm talking. I just have a couple of things. One, I'm going to put into the chat another survey link for something else entirely, which is what we're calling our cohort survey or our community of focus survey. If you haven't filled that out, it's going to help us as we're trying to figure out what groups you're going to be put in. So please fill that out. And if you have not downloaded the MOU from our website, gotten it signed by the appropriate person, and then uploaded it on our website, we encourage you to do that, please, within the next couple of weeks. We only, as my understanding is, we only have 12 of you that have signed and submitted the MOUs. We've got thousands and thousands of dollars that we want to give to you. And without an MOU, we cannot give it to you. So please do that before the end of the year, within the next couple of weeks. That would be great. I'm going to give you a little bit more time to take this poll and let us know how we're doing, and have a fabulous week, a fabulous weekend. Oh, a new term has been coined in the chat, by the way, and I want you to know that you all are now AMPers. AMPers. Welcome to the AMP Club. We love it. Thank you. If you finish the poll and you're all done, you can leave us. We will miss you, and we will see you next week.
Ampersands. Did you see that, Elisa, Joe? I like that one. Thanks, Joe.
Ampersands.
Yeah. I see a t-shirt coming.
We could make a really cool t-shirt with that.
100%.
Yeah, we don't call it AA for obvious reasons.